The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, and welcome to today's presentation of National School Library Standards, Digging Deeper into Inquire. My name is Paige Bradenkamp. I'm School Library Consultant at Wyoming State Library, and I will be facilitating today. The speaker is Jennison Lucas, School Librarian, and presenter of the National School Library Standards, recent production of AASL. Just a few housekeeping tips. You are on mute, but if you have questions or comments, please put those in the questions box down below or into the chat box. While Jennison is presenting, I'll be taking note of the questions, answering what I can at the time, and there will be a question and answer session at the end of the presentation. So without further ado, I would like to present Jennison Lucas and the new National School Library Standards Part 1.
Excellent. Welcome, everybody. I am coming through, right, Paige?
Yes, loud and clear.
All right, excellent. So welcome to our today's webinar, and I'm going to kind of preface this a little bit with letting you know that I am, most of the stuff that we're going to see on the slides is stuff that I've created. It's not necessarily officially AASL. It's work that I've been doing with the standards on my own, talking about inquiry. And then we'll finish up with looking across the frameworks along from library learners to librarians to library. Okay, so first of all, like accessing the standards, you can do that through the book, which you can get at the ALA store. I think I saw it even on Amazon. It's $199 if you are not a member of AASL, but if you are, you can get it for $99 through the ALA store. That won't be the case on Amazon because they won't know. And there is an app that is currently $12.99. You can download it from the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store. Right now it's $12.99. On February 15th, it is going to go up in price to $19.99. So you may want to get a copy if you don't have it. It has all three of the strands of the standards frameworks. It has the learner, the librarian, and the library. It's pretty much only that. There is a few extra things that are added in, but not nearly as much as the book. And then the last place, of course, is the webinar, is the website portal, the standards.aasl.org. And they have changed the location to make it a little more convenient. So when you go to standards.aasl.org, Learner Framework will be one of the things that is right across the top in the navigation bar part of the menu. So instead of having to scroll down, you can now just click right on it at the top. So, and I did check based on something that someone asked in the last webinar, and they are trying to work out the usage rights to create an ebook. So that may be coming our way in the future, but I have no other details about that. So some of the terminology that we'll need for understanding and accessing the framework is, first of all, they're choosing to use the word learners instead of students, because that lets us all be learners, our staff, us, our students, any other parents, anybody else that we interact with, and kind of gives a nod to that idea of us being lifelong learners. Our common beliefs are a set of really what it says, common beliefs that we as school librarians hold dear to our hearts. Our shared foundations are the top level of the standards. These are the inquire, include, collaborate, curate, explore, and engage. Underneath those shared foundations are our key commitments, which are really a description of a more in-depth description of what those shared foundations mean. The domains are then sort of a depth of knowledge way of looking at the domains, at least I think of them that way, or of looking at the shared foundation. So those are our think, create, share, and grow that kind of go more in depth along the way. Competencies are really what our standards are, and they're a little bit different from the idea of outcome standards, and we're going to talk about that in a minute. But our competencies are the actual specific standards that we would like to have our students be able to master. And then the alignments are, let's see, for some reason alignments didn't pop up. There we go. Alignments are what we're calling the school library piece of those frameworks, so that we have learner competencies, librarian competencies, and library alignments. So what our library should offer in order to help us be able to do the other two with our librarians in our libraries. Okay, this slide shows the images of those shared foundations and key commitments, so that we are inquiring, or the Inquire and that's shared foundation, or the key commitment underneath across all of them. And these are our domains with a graphic that shows how each shared foundation has all 4 domains listed inside. Okay, so now going a little bit more in depth is our Inquire, is our shared foundation. Our key commitment here is to build knowledge by inquiring, thinking critically, identifying problems, and developing strategies for solving problems. And I'm pretty excited about this. The more that I've gotten into it, I'm excited about all of the standards, which is one of the reasons I like to do these webinars. So here's what we're looking at for the specific standards for Inquire, with our shared foundation and key commitment at the side, and then our list of domains, and then the individual competencies underneath. And we're going to take a look at individually each of those on the next following slides. I just thought it would be nice to see a slide of this is what all we're going to talk about today. So first, we're going to talk a little bit about outcome versus competency standards. So outcomes are really what we're having in a specific lesson as a learning target. It's something that we're going to be able to specifically say this skill is what our students are going to learn. And we have those kind of embedded inside of our competencies, which are a little bit bigger. And as I was thinking about this, I was trying to come up with a way to really visually explain it, and I thought of it like this. An outcome is a lot like doing a puzzle. There are certain ways that all the pieces fit together. We're going to work at it, but by the time that we're done, we are going to have completed a puzzle. And that is the outcome. So all of those puzzle pieces will make one picture when we're finished. And no matter how many times we redo that, we're still going to be making one picture. Whereas in a competency, it's a little bit more like Legos, in my opinion, that yes, within those Legos, you can follow specific directions and build a specific thing, but you can then also take all of those pieces and put them into different ways. So once we learn how the pieces go together and how we can hook them together, then we can redesign them in other ways. So competency standard, we can do the entire competency in kindergarten. It's just not going to look the same. What they build in kindergarten with their Legos is not going to look the same as what a junior or senior in high school is going to build with their Legos. They'll know all of the pieces, but they will also be able to branch out and use the same tools to do their own thing, which is kind of exciting. Okay, so let's step back and take a look specifically at Inquire Think. Our competencies for this one are that learners will display curiosity and initiative by formulating questions about a personal interest or a curricular topic, and recalling prior knowledge and prior and background knowledge as context for new meaning. Those are pretty big ideas. And so one way to go about working with them is deconstruction and deconstructing those standards. We have done a lot of work with this in my school district, so I've had some special training even on how to deconstruct a standard. So if we look at a standard, and we kind of really need to deconstruct them ourselves and think about our students and what skills they have and what skills they need. But a basic explanation for this one, if we deconstruct the first one, formulating questions about a personal interest or curricular topic, a deconstruction of that would be that our students need to understand question words. We need to recognize that questions need to have answers, that's part of the way that language works. We need to know how to construct questions, how to actually ask it, and part of this is identifying topics of interest, recognizing things that you've already done that might somehow tie into what you're now learning, and then recognize knowledge gaps. Okay, I do know about bears, but what else might I want to know about bears? So then if we move down to our second standard, our second competency, recalling prior and background knowledge, the deconstruction here might look like remembering details from a previous learning experience, filling in the K part of a KWL chart, for instance, comparing that new information that we just read in a book to what we've read before, seeing where it matches up, and then maybe even knowing how to construct a graphic organizer like that KWL chart or some others that you might use in your class. Now, one of the things that I have seen on a lot of lists and groups that I belong to are a lot of questions about what this really is going to look like, especially at our different grade levels. So again, this is something that I have constructed, and I work in an elementary environment, so I really know K-5, but I don't work with the kinders as much anymore in my current position. And I don't know as much about 8th grade to 10th grade, but I'm going to give it a try anyway. So in kindergarten, Inquire, Think might look like recognizing question words, and the question mark goes at the end of a question word. Understanding that questions require a response. So if someone asks you a question, you should answer it. Okay? And then connecting background knowledge to a new topic. Hey, we're going to read this book about bears. Do we know anything about bears? And activate that background knowledge. By 5th grade, it's going to be a little bit more in depth. We're going to construct meaningful questions related to a discussion topic. By 5th grade, we should be starting to move a little bit farther away from just the basic fact-finding kind of things and start moving into bigger topics. And then recognizing the difference between that factual question and a more in-depth question. So how big is an elephant versus why are elephants possibly on the endangered list? And by 5th grade, we should certainly be able to do that. By 8th grade, it's going to be going a little bit more in depth, constructing a meaningful question out of personal interest related to the topic. So doing a lot more of connecting to ourselves and to the real world, striving for more in-depth questioning that we're really going to start, I would hope, looking for more in-depth questions than just the simple facts. And then by 10th grade, we definitely are going to be looking for constructing impactful questions, combining background knowledge from multiple disciplines and to increase our understanding of a real world problem. And by 10th grade, we really should be looking for, at least I think, that idea that math does not happen only in math class, for instance. Okay. So then as we continue on to Inquire, Create, we have the competencies. We'll kind of do just one at a time through the deconstruction this time. That using the evidence to investigate questions, using evidence. That one is going to look deconstructed like, first of all, identifying possible sources of information might fall into this. Choosing which source might be the most helpful. I need to know where a country is. Maybe a map would help me. Locating the relevant information within that source. If you're using an atlas, you might need to find the part on Asia. Using text features to locate your information. So, and then even going back to finding where that information is actually going to be, maybe even identifying bold print words. On our second one, with learners engage with new knowledge by following a process that includes devising and implementing a plan to fill knowledge gaps. We would look at recognizing what information is missing. What do I not know yet of what I wanted to know? Knowing the parts of a research process so that we know that we can go back and forth between them as we need to even. Creating questions to locate that missing information so that we can move from having just a topic to actually what exactly is it that we wanted to know. And then number 3, the generating products that illustrate learning could deconstruct into knowing available tools for creating products, choosing a tool by audience or purpose, creating a chosen product, including written and visual information. And so this would be the look of all 3 of them deconstructed. These, I would also just like to remind you, are not necessarily the only deconstructions. As you look at it, you might realize that there are other things. And I also was a little bit limited by the amount of space on my slide, because I think of more as every time that I reread them. So Inquire, Create at the different levels may look like in kindergarten, knowing that a source is where you get information. You can ask a teacher, you can read a book, you can watch it in a movie or a video. Going back into the text to answer the questions, like point to where it tells us that what an elephant eats, so that they can see that it comes from somewhere. That's their evidence. And then even drawing a picture about what they've learned as part of sharing that information back to us. In 5th grade, that's going to be a little bit bigger with identifying possible sources of information, using multiple sources to find our evidence, being able to pull more information, follow with guidance steps of a research or inquiry process so that we are stepping through the multiple crazy mess that it might be to do inquiry. And then creating, again, a product, such as a poster, a podcast, something that they can use to share their learning. In the 8th grade, we'll be a little bit more in depth with recognizing the credibility of information in multiple sources. I start that in 4th grade in trying to get them to look at it that way, but I don't think that they can do it quite yet on their own. Following the steps of the inquiry and research process, creating a product such as a website or multimedia presentation, something to share learning. In 10th grade, this may be accurately quoting evidence from our reliable sources, being able to say that how they're reliable, independently following the steps of the research process, then moving away from having that much guidance, and then creating a product such as a website, blog, or multimedia presentation to share the learning with a wider audience. And by 10th grade, it should be moving beyond, I think, just the classroom and peers environment. They should be able to seek out some more authentic audiences for this as well. And now we'll pause here for a moment just to say that we could probably do all of these across any of these grade levels. I've done PowerPoint presentations with kindergartners before. They definitely look a lot different from what my 5th graders do, from what I've seen high schoolers do. So it's not just wait and do what we think a kindergartner can do. It's fine to push them to bigger things, and they get very excited by that. As a matter of fact, right now I'm starting a project with my 5th graders where we're going to create a website at the end of their inquiry process. And some of the questioning that is coming out of what they're doing has really blown my mind. And all we've done so far is ask questions. And they know that they're going to get to build the website at the end of the process, but we're trying to step them through it as far up the level as we can go. Okay, so inquiring and sharing is our 3rd. And so looking at these competencies, learners adapt, communicate, and exchange learning products with others in a cycle. I love that phrase, that we're going to do it in a cycle. That includes interacting with content presented by others, which deconstructed might look like reading, viewing, listening attentively to content from a variety of sources and formats, watching a video clip, listening to a podcast, looking at what our classmates are doing could be part of that. Respecting others' space and turn to speak, that would be part of our, we are a Common Core state, so that's part of the listening and speaking standards as well, to let them speak and be attentive as we do so. And then our second one, providing constructive feedback. Deconstructing that might be recognizing the difference between positive and negative criticism, and the idea that you can, in a positive way, say this needs to be changed a little bit. So, for instance, as we're going through my creation of what I think this should look like at different grade levels, if you teach 8th grade or high school and you're saying, yeah, you're way off on that, please put a chat thing in there so that I know better, and I'll be glad to learn from you as part of this process. And then knowing how to share helpful tips with, and I put in here without being mean, because I do work with 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders, and they're not always very tactful in their providing feedback. But that's definitely something we would need to teach as a skill before we could expect our kids to do it. And then our third one, acting on that feedback to improve, we have to do some teaching on how to listen to that criticism without taking it personally, without putting up our shackles and getting all mad that they said they didn't like it. And then being willing to try out ideas from others and do some revision. And I know in my grade levels that I work with, they do not like revising what they've done. If they've already written it, we don't need to rewrite it. And so it doesn't matter what anyone else thinks. And that's something that we need to teach and work with. And then our the fourth competency on here is to share products with an authentic audience. So this brings in deconstructed skills like speaking skills, such as how to read from a note card and still look up at the camera, which I hope I'm doing an okay job of here. Using our body language for effect instead of kind of showing that we don't know what we're talking about, I guess. Ensuring that it's legible, that there's clear audio content, that our slides are readable, it's not blurry, it's not smudged, all that stuff. Understanding formal and informal language patterns, that there are certain things that you can say in certain audiences, and when you're talking to your friends at recess, that's a different language pattern than when you are standing in front of your peers and speaking, or when you're talking to the mayor or whoever else might be coming in. And again, there's probably more other ideas in that deconstruction. Okay. And then looking forward to what does this look like across grade levels. Our kindergartners should listen when others share, and then be clear when they speak and share with others. And I put in here the idea of learning a glow and grow or some other similar strategy as young as kindergarten, to be able to say, I really liked that you drew flowers in your picture, and then, but could you put more? You know, I would like to see this way if you could improve it. Okay. Also speaking aloud, sharing pictures or writing about their learning in some way that someone else, preferably a peer, would also see that, not just the teacher. Our 5th grade should be listening attentively when others share. They should be learning the idea of taking notes when other people are presenting and being able to provide good feedback that way. Use some sort of constructive criticism strategy like we've been learning through the other grades. Revising our work based on peer recommendation. Like I said, that's not always easy. That's not always easy for adults to accept that criticism and try something again too. But it is a very important part of going back and saying, oh yeah, I did forget that, let's put that in. And then presenting to peer groups or other audiences. And I put this in as other audiences because the 5th grade project at one school that I am at, they're going to be learning PE. They're going to be doing a PE project, and they're going to be doing sports as their topics. That each group has their own sport, and part of their project is the website that they'll create. And then part of it is that they're going to present how to do the sport that they're going to learn about to the 4th graders. And we have a whole morning set aside, and the 4th graders do rotations, the 5th graders do 10-minute presentations, and we're teaching them to give constructive criticism and feedback and show and how to teach and how to do all of those things. And that's an important thing to start even at the young age of 10. My slide did not advance. There we go. 8th grade should be, of course, again, listening when others share attentively, using those constructive criticism strategies. And maybe by 8th grade, we should be seeking some peer support. And before we turn stuff in, go and ask our peers to look over it for us. I probably asked 3 or 4 people to look at these slides before I was ready to think it was time to present. So seeking that support and assistance to improve the product, knowing that we can't always do it alone. Learning is a shared event in all the time. And then again, presenting to share with appropriate audiences, which by this point could be peers or adults. And it could be sharing with other teachers or sharing with the parent-teacher group or some other organization like that, even outside of the school. By 10th, I am thinking that they would, of course, be able to listen attentively to presentations, use constructive criticism, seek peer review and input to improve their projects and products, and share their presentation in a variety of formats to reach appropriate audiences, that it may not even be face-to-face, that maybe it is better to do it as a podcast and share it with a wider audience. Or maybe the audience that you want to share it with isn't at your school and you want to share this information with one of the other schools or the children at one of the elementary schools, and designing their presentations to be that way. And then Inquire, Grow. This is our 4th domain. As we look down the competencies, learners will participate in an ongoing inquiry-based process by continually seeking knowledge. Now, I know from the students that I work with that this is really hard. They really want to be able to Google the answer and write it down and then be done. They're done with their homework. They have the answer. We don't need any more. So in some of that deconstruction is to generate questions when engaging with information. So, okay, now I found out that answer. What other questions do I have now? Because maybe I didn't understand it, and it's okay that I didn't. So what other things can I add? Understanding that one source is not going to give all of the information. We may need to look for both sides or all of the sides of a story. We may one site may tell us the information in one way and another source may tell us something else that that'll help make us understand a little bit better. By the time that with our second one, engaging in a sustained inquiry, we'll be constructing deeper questions for investigation. So some examples from the project at other schools that I'm working at, they're not doing the sports project. So we're doing an open inquiry. And I have some students who really wanted to ask questions like, who is the strongest person in the world? And so we were trying to get them to branch that out a little bit and add in, what do we consider strength or something like that to make it a more in-depth question. I did have one group that kind of floored me with their questions and came up with the question of, why is the entertainment industry so corrupt? And these are 5th graders, so I had to kind of feel them out a little bit, but they were starting to have conversations with each other about political messages being embedded into the movies that come out of Hollywood. And that's one of the things that they really wanted to investigate. And it was an amazing conversation with 10 and 11-year-olds. Another part of that deconstruction might be to actively look for more perspectives and information, not just look at whatever has been handed to them. And then to search past the bold print words, which is really hard at elementary level, possibly hard everywhere. And then our third, enacting new understanding through real-world connections. These are making text to self and text to world connections, or whatever. I'm not really sure what the other term would be if we're using more multimedia to self or connections. I'm not really sure what that terminology is, so I fell back on what I know. And then construct inquiry questions based on world observations, like that one group that I was just telling you about that is noticing some interesting things as they're watching movies. And then number 4 is using reflection to guide informed decisions. So that might mean teaching some general reflection strategies. We tend to think, okay, I'm done, I'm going to turn it in, it's all finished. So what does that really, how can we go back and look at it and say, what did I learn by doing this project? And what else might I want to know? If I got to do it over again, what would I have done differently? All of those questions that we as good teachers will reflect and think. But we need to systematically teach that process to our kids because they really have no idea how to do that. Okay. And so that kind of brings us through all of our, let's deconstruct our standards a little bit, look at what outcomes there might be under that. So each of these competencies may have multiple lessons embedded in them, multiple specific learning strategies that we want to teach. And it'll be over time, over the course of kindergarten through our senior year of high school, or even on into college and into the real world, whatever that is on the outside of it, that we're going to be continually working on these. And it's not necessarily an, okay, yep, check, I know that they know how to continually seek knowledge, but it's going to be an in practice sort of thing to continue as they progress through whatever they choose to learn. And then inquire, grow at the different levels. It should look like in kindergarten, I think, choosing some reading that matches topics of interest or questions they have, making those text to self connections or those topic to self connections maybe. Engage in guided research or inquiry projects that and I know I've had teachers who have told me that kindergartners can't do this, but I've done it with them, and it's amazing the thoughts that kinders have because they're still at that edge of that. Well, they're still very much in it, maybe not at the edge of it, of that why phase of we want to know everything. And so it's amazing to listen to questions that they might come up with and try to experience it with them. By fifth grade, we should be doing, again, that seeking multiple sources about a topic of interest, and even recognizing that just because we learned it at school doesn't mean that you stop learning with that project. If you did a little project on World War II and now you want to know more, it's okay to keep going and see what else you can find out. Conducting longer group or independent research projects. One of the Common Core standards is doing short research projects, but then building that onto that and teaching them to continue and have sustained inquiry is a very rewarding process. And then connecting learning to real world situations can start in fifth grade, trying to figure out how do I share what I just learned with people who are outside of school. And then begin that self-reflecting, and beginning that may actually should happen in kindergarten. What did we learn from this? But even in fifth grade is right where they can start doing some of that metacognition, and maybe even on their own without some guidance of saying, okay, what did I need to know? So when we finish this project that we're doing, one of the questions that I always ask when we do it every year is, if I could do this again, what would I wish my teacher had given me more instruction on? So that they could say, oh yeah, this is a spot where I should have asked for help. So that they can think a little bit more about that. I didn't know all of the answers. What else should I have learned? By eighth grade, I'm thinking that we're again seeking multiple perspectives and sources during our inquiry process, actively engaging in complex group or independent inquiry projects. This might still be teacher guided a little bit in the eighth grade, but being able to add a little bit of depth to those projects, even in how they do it. Seeking to share new knowledge with a variety of audiences. It's not just a do it and done sort of thing if they're interested in it. And then in 10th grade, consider some independent or non-school inquiry projects, that idea of getting ready for college, starting to decide what am I interested in, what kind of things do I want to progress on with life in general. Committing to seeking multiple perspectives and sources, like always going into it knowing that it's not just going to be a one-stop shop. And connecting learning to real-world environments. So doing things such as proposing that there be a bill enacted or something like that, that you actually go outside of school and present it to other people and try to make a difference in the world. And then, that last one was that seeking authentic audiences. So going out and saying, you know what, I want to share this with the Rotary Club and see if there's anything we can do as a community service project, for instance, might be an example of that. Okay. And then overall, inquiry is one of the reasons I'm a school librarian is because I love inquiry. I love the fact that it looks like this. It's messy. It's crazy. We scratch our heads as we're doing it. There's so many different paths we can follow. And it's not as cut and dried as let's just sit and do step 1, step 2, step 3, we're done. It's let's do step 1 and 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 2, and then 3 and 4, and back and forth and back and forth. And it's amazing, which also means that it's like this. Because when we get to the end and we get to share, it should be a huge celebration of look what I learned. And because it is the process, it's an I can do it again part that is really exciting. So then that brings us to assessment. And we do have to assess our students' learning because that's the only way that we're going to know what they're learning and how they're learning it. So formative assessment is checking along the way. It's very diagnostic. It's what are we going to, where are you and how are you going to continue? What do you need to know next? All of those sorts of things. So some ideas for formative assessments for inquiry specifically are going to be things like exit tickets. So in my 5th grade project, they're going to do an exit ticket through Google Classroom where each day I'm going to ask them to tell me one thing that they learned. And it won't take very long for them to do it, which is good because we only have them for a half an hour. But then being able to gather that and see what they're doing. Conferences, just talking to the students and saying, where are you in your learning? Are there any questions I can answer for you? And always being available for that. Builds rapport and lets them know that they're in a safe space too. I will also use Plickers, especially if I've done a quick little lesson like today our 3rd graders were learning about keywords. So we do a couple of quick multiple choice questions to make sure that they understood what a keyword is. And or other programs that are like that could also be used. My kids like Plickers because they think it's a game. Using polls would work the same way as Plickers, and you might be able to ask some more open-ended questions with them. Spot checks, like show me what you've done, and just hold it up or point to it as I come around or something like that so you can see that they're still on task. Or even share outs and just bring the class together at the end and say, what kind of problems did we encounter today? Or does anyone want to share something really cool that they discovered today? And that can be very, very positive for kids to be able to hear the progress and then say, oh yeah, I'm making that same progress. Now the summative side is going to be a little bit more end game, the final product, the part where they're going to be able to get the grade for the project, that sort of thing. And those can also be assessed, obviously, if we're going to add them to grades. But those would be final products that might be a poster or a website or a podcast or any myriad of things that we think of that, or that our students think of as a way to share what they've learned. Or a presentation, such as doing speeches, doing the Teach Twos with the 4th graders, for instance. Our 3rd graders do a wax museum, and that's in some ways it's a lot like a simple biography report and fact-finding thing, but they really take on the persona of the person, and they really think about things a little bit differently when they do it. And then, or even a portfolio, let's gather up all of the things. There are obviously other ideas as well that you probably have amazing things that you're doing in your classrooms to do formative assessments or summative assessments. And depending on what groups you're working with, you may have a lot of other options. Okay, so then looking across our frameworks, we can, in looking at this Inquire, at the learner, and because these, the school librarian and the school library are kind of housed within the book that we need to buy or the app, I'm not going to do all of them. I'm just going to kind of do a sneak peek at one. So I picked for Inquire to look at Create, which would be the 2nd domain. And for the learner, that standard was to learners engage with new knowledge by following a process that includes using evidence to investigate questions. So on the librarian's competencies, it follows right along there that school librarians promote new knowledge generation by ensuring that the learners probe possible answers to questions. So the learner is going to use evidence, and we as a librarian are going to ask them where their evidence is and show them possible places to gather more and lead them into thinking about one side or the other side of the presentation. And then the school library alignment for this particular competency would be the school library enables the generation of new knowledge by providing experiences with and access to resources, information, ideas, and technology for all learners in the school community. So our space and our area and our whole existence, of course, is going to be around not only providing the resources and the things that are in the library, but also access to experiences. And as we have them in for a class, let's give them a little taste of something that they might be able to do to move farther along in their inquiry learning. So that brings me to the end of what I was going to share in here today. And I know that was a lot of information, and I hope I was not talking as fast as some of my students say that I do. I have a feeling I may have been because I'm so excited about the information. But now I think that we have a few minutes that we could do questions if Paige has some there for me.
Yes, I do. Thank you, Jennison. That was so wonderful. And it's so inspiring because these standards definitely show just how complex research is, and yet the standards are so holistic, and it's not just the hard research skills, but soft skills, having to do with collaboration and presenting. And I love the examples, because, that is these standards in action. So thank you.
Exactly.
Yes, and research is very messy, and I love that. And you made me laugh when you showed that slide. So thank you.
I was hoping, because I realized that there was a lot of stuff.
Yes.
As we're talking about it, and that you kind of needed a little bit of say, oh yeah, that is exactly what I feel like when I'm trying to do it or teach it.
Well, yes, and it is. And I think every school librarian and educator and even parent knows that research is so messy. Learning new things is messy, and these standards just help to separate the steps a little bit and help you see where you're going, where you need to go, as far as reaching kids. So there were a couple of questions. And before we go into that, I do want to state that the recording of this will be available next week. So if you've missed any part of this presentation, it will be available next week on the Wyoming State Library YouTube channel, as well as the Wyoming State Library website in the webinars index. But a couple of questions that we got, Jennison. One from Floyd, and that is, have there been crosswalks created with other standards such as ISTE?
They are, my understanding, the last I heard was that they're working on crosswalks with Common Core for sure. And there was some talk about looking at trying to crosswalk with ISTE. There are a lot of commonalities between our standards and ISTE's standards, because we really want the same thing on the other side, is we want our kids to be problem solvers and critical thinkers. So I'm sure that there are some obvious things, and I'm not sure exactly what's happening with the crosswalks, but I do know that that is one of the things that they're looking at AASL.
Yeah, and I'm sure with all of this, it is a very complex, robust set of competencies, frameworks. I'm sure it does take some time. That also touched upon Devin's question about when the Common Core AASL standards crosswalk will be updated.
And I don't know the answer to that. I will certainly ask and see what I can find out, because I am looking forward to seeing that crosswalk as well. And I think that they're working on a lot of things. They did say that there were going to be a lot of new things that were going to come out around midwinter. So that may be a place that those of us who are affiliates or in affiliate assembly at our states may see that at the affiliate meeting. And anything that I do find out as I ask questions and try to be more involved in this, I will be glad to share next time around.
I have a question too. ALA Midwinter is coming up. Is there going to be anything there from AASL in Denver in February?
I am sure there are.
Okay.
I am only going for a meeting that I'm supposed to be going to, so I have not looked at the whole big thing about like the whole big catalog of events, but AASL usually does have some things going on. Okay. And I'm assuming that they have some stuff that's going on with the standards, but I honestly haven't looked. But if you go to the conference stuff on ALA's website, you should be able to get to the conference agenda. By now it should be up so that you can look at what all of the concurrent sessions are and who the speakers are and things like that.
Great. So if anybody's interested, then they can go and maybe get some more information about that in Denver.
Yes.
Okay.
Also on the AASL standards page, so that's standards.aasl.org, there is along the top navigation bar under material, I think it's under materials, there's a professional development spot, and there's a lot of stuff coming out from AASL now. So there's actually a Twitter chat that's supposed to start at 6 o'clock tonight, but I'm not really sure what time zone 6 o'clock that was supposed to start in. But they have a whole calendar on there about anything like ours I don't think ours made it to the calendar in time, but anything that an affiliate is presenting, anything that AASL is presenting, they have done several webinars. They have a few more that are coming up. Their webinars are linked on that PD page and are free for now. I don't know when they're going to hide that behind the eCollab and get in so that you'd have to be an AASL member or pay for eCollab in order to access it. But for right now, they are free, and you can actually go in and watch their recordings, and they're doing some amazing stuff. The implementation team has been working so hard to get everything set up, and they have a 3-year plan for the rollout of this. So I know a lot of us are anxious that we want it all right now, but they really have a huge plan. And that implementation plan is also linked to their standards page, their standards portal. So if you want to go in and find out if they have a suggested deadline for whatever, you could probably look and see. There may still be some that they don't have an exact time, and they're just thinking sometime in the first year or the second year, but that at least gives a little bit of guideline.
And it's a lot of work, so good for them. And
absolutely, we definitely thank them.
Yes. Also, this is just an aside, but the standards book, we're going to have 2 available at the Wyoming State Library. Anybody who is in Wyoming will be able to check those out and have those delivered to your school, so you can take a look at those. Yes. A lot of reading, but a lot of great information.
And it's amazing reading. I actually added the outcome competency slide after doing some of the reading yesterday because I have not finished reading the book yet. I'm still plowing my way through because there's so much amazing stuff.
And I'm sure
they've already prepared.
Yeah, I'm sure it's something you could read more than once and get something new
Absolutely.
every time. So wonderful. Well, do we have any more questions today? We've had a great turnout. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And
very much.
Yeah. So yeah, if there are no more questions, then we'll go ahead and close for today. That was a good almost hour.
Good.
Yes, thank you for coming, Jane, and everybody. And again, standards.aasl.org, and that's where you can find information about these new standards, as well as some infographics and printouts. And yes, Patricia, there will be a part 2. We are going to go through Genesis.
The shared foundations, yeah. The plan is that we're going to do a webinar for each of the shared foundations. So today was Inquire. Next time will be Include. And so this is forcing me to learn this, really, is my end game here, that I'm going to know a lot about it because I'm going to try to be ready to share as we go. I'm practicing this whole inquiry process and all that lifelong learning stuff right along the way. So that is the plan, so that there will be at least 5 more, right? Possibly a couple others as we think of other things that we want to add.
Yes, and they will come along once a month. We do this on a monthly basis since Jennison is very busy with her 4 schools. So
Exactly.
amongst other things. So yes. So,
my 4-year-old.
there you go. 4 schools, a 4-year-old, and yeah, it keeps you on your toes. So
Certainly.
thank you, everybody, for coming, and we hope to see you next month.
Thank you very much.
For the continuing education calendar on the WSL website. That is updated at the end of every month, and you'll see next month's webinar scheduled, so you can be here for that, and they are always recorded and put up and available for free. So thank you again.
And we will share that link out on LMNet and various other locations as well, as we have it available, because I know that some people are not tuned into the state library stuff.
That's very
for Wyoming, because I know that there are a few of you probably from other places.
Yes, yes. And for those of you in Wyoming, the school library listserv through WLA is where we also put out a lot of it, all of this information. So hope to see you there.
And our Facebook group.
And yes, the Facebook.
So we have a Facebook group for the school library interest group, so you can find that on there as well.
And Jennison is on Twitter as well as me. I'm on Twitter as well. So check the.
Absolutely. Do we need to put that page up?
Oh, yeah, let's do that. Let's put up some contact info. And
it's like, where did my page go? Okay, there we go. And there's our contact page.
Yes.
With our Twitter handles and our emails, and
look how techie we are.
I know, right?
So yes, if you need to.
We're trying to rock this librarian thing.
Wonderful. Okay, well, with no more questions, and that's it for today. So thank you again for joining us, and yeah, we'll see you next month.
Thank you, guys.